The main role of the respiratory system is to take in oxygen, which is needed to make ATP, and to expel carbon dioxide, which is a byproduct of that same equation. There are certainly other functions of the respiratory system, but for now, we're just going to focus on inhalation and exhalation of oxygen and CO2. In this picture, what we see are different regions of the respiratory system: the nasal cavity, oral cavity. The throat immediately posterior to the nasal cavity is known as the pharynx, specifically the nasopharynx. Posterior to the oral cavity is the oral pharynx. And this region right here is the laryngopharynx, because it is immediately posterior to part of the respiratory system known as the larynx. So this region right here is the larynx. We'll cover that in more detail. Inferior to the larynx is the trachea, which is composed of hyaline cartilage, which divides into a right and left bronchi, going to the right and left lungs respectively. Inferior to the lungs, we see the diaphragm, which is the main muscle of respiration. If we take a look at this is the trachea. Like I suggested previously, the trachea splits into the right and left bronchi, going to the lungs. Those bronchi will diverge to even smaller structures known as secondary and tertiary bronchi, and the smallest air tubes are known as bronchioles, which will terminate into the air sacs known as alveoli. That is the bulk of the respiratory system. What I want to focus on right now is the nasal cavity, which we see right here, that's composed of turbinate bones, also known as conchae, inferior conchae, middle conchae, and superior conchae. And we can see another depiction of it right here, but we're going to look at this one, a more simplistic view. So here is the nostril, the nose, and in the nasal cavity, we find the inferior, middle, and superior conchae, also known as turbinate bones, because they cause the air to become turbid and swirl around in this region before moving inferiorly into the nasopharynx, oropharynx, and into the windpipe. The conchae are covered with epithelial tissue, specifically pseudostratified columnar epithelial tissue that is ciliated. Here we see goblet cells which secrete mucus, and this mucus traps any debris, pathogens, particles that are entering the upper respiratory tract via the nasal cavity. And that mucus secreted by these goblet cells are also going to help moisten or humidify the incoming air. So the turbinate bones help to cleanse, moisten, and they help warm up the incoming air. Now, one thing I haven't shown, but I'm going to show it right now, is this orange region, which I've just added right here. This is the basement membrane. As we've discussed numerous times, all epithelial tissue sits on a basement membrane or lamina propria that is riddled with blood vessels. The blood vessels carry heat that dissipates across this epithelial tissue and helps warm up the incoming air. So as air comes in the nasal cavity, it swirls around these turbinate bones before it starts descending into the respiratory tract. That is the function of the turbinate bones of the nasal cavity. Here we get a better look at the upper respiratory system, nasal cavity, oral cavity, and here we can see the larynx, which is bound superiorly by the epiglottis and inferiorly by the cricoid cartilage. This right here is the thyroid cartilage. There is actually an epiglottal cartilage within the epiglottis. The larynx is composed of 9 cartilages, 8 of which are composed of hyaline cartilage, and the cartilage within the epiglottis is composed of elastic cartilage. Here's another view of the larynx right here. This is the thyroid cartilage. This is the cricoid cartilage. And everything inferior to that is the trachea, which is also composed of cartilaginous hyaline rings. If we go back here, one thing I want to point out to you is here's the trachea. immediately posterior to the trachea is the esophagus. So keep in mind the esophagus is leading to the stomach, which is not part of the respiratory system. So if you eat a cheeseburger, it goes through your oral cavity into your oral pharynx and then down into the esophagus. When one swallows, the trachea elevates and the epiglottis depresses, closing the opening to the trachea or opening to the windpipe. And what we see right here, this is the lateral view of the larynx. What we see right here, this is the opening to the windpipe. You can see the cartilaginous rings down in here at the superior aspect of the trachea. The opening here is known as the glottis, which is bound laterally by the vocal cords. Lateral to those here and here are the vestibular folds. But the opening right here is the glottis, and that is what air passes through en route to the windpipe. During swallowing of the cheeseburger or asparagus, broccoli, a milkshake, whatever it is, the epiglottis, which is right here, covers up this opening to prevent any food or fluid of entering our respiratory system, or our lower respiratory tract, if you will. And we'll continue on with the respiratory system in our next video.